What an incredible last 3 days here at the Sing Conference in Nashville, Tennessee. We've been so encouraged, as you see this set here, to have interviews with key speakers and hear really just wonderful testimonies. Things that I know will encourage you in learning how to share your faith with a crazy culture, how to just grow deeper in your walk with Jesus, and then to hear what God is doing around the world. Now, I pray you'll stay tuned and that you'll watch this next video, and I know that it'll be an encouragement to you.
Well, Rick Dempsey, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, and I know you're here with your wife, Carrie.
Yep.
You've got five children and 9 grandchildren.
Man, you got all the. She gave you the lowdown already.
She gave me the lowdown.
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's right. You got it right.
What else would you like to say, just from a personal standpoint?
Oh man, yeah, I got the 9 grandkids that keep me really, really busy.
I bet. Now the question is, do you know all the ages?
Yeah, I think I might have it down.
I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good. I think.
Yeah, very good. And so you guys, both of you, grew up in the LA area, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. She was up north, kind of Ventura County, and I was in Los Angeles County. We met at the Masters University.
Okay.
It was actually the Masters College back then.
Yeah.
And we met there and got married even before I graduated.
Okay.
And started our family about 5 years after that.
Okay, and so from the Masters, where did you go from there? Because I know when you were at the Masters, you had thoughts about, well, someday I wouldn't mind working for Disney.
Yeah, my history of entertainment goes back to when I was like a little kid. I actually started singing in church and all the children's musicals growing up in the 70s.
Okay.
Right? There were always the children's musicals, right?
Yeah.
So I started singing in our church musicals, and there were a lot of industry people at our church, First Baptist Church of Van Nuys, and movie producers, record executives would hear me sing and say, hey, we need a kid to sing in this production, so can you come sing on this album, or can you do this TV show for us? And so I got kind of indoctrinated early on as a young kid doing a lot of singing in the entertainment industry, and I loved it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of something that resonated with me as a young child, and I thought, oh, that's kind of what I want to do for a living. Not necessarily be a performer, but somewhere in the arts and in entertainment. So I always kind of had my eye on the entertainment business from a very young age.
Yeah. So then what was your first step into the entertainment? Like at post-college, what was your first step?
Post-college, I actually got a job at a place called Deke Enterprises.
Okay.
And Deke, you may know some of their shows. Inspector Gadget was the first show that I worked on. The Real Ghostbusters, based on the movie. There was Dennis the Menace, which was a cartoon series. Garfield the cat. It was Heathcliff with us.
Yeah.
So anyways, that was, I started out as a runner.
Okay.
I literally heard they were new in town, and back then we had no cell phones, so I looked them up in the phone book, and they were on Ventura Boulevard. And I literally walked in their door and said, hey, do you guys got a job for me? And they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I'll do anything. But they said, well, we need someone to run packages. So I ran packages for a summer. Okay. And they said, hey, we like you. Would you like to stick around? And I said, yeah, but I don't want to run packages anymore. Kind of told them my background in recording and performing. And so I said, I'd really like to be in your music department.
Yeah.
They said, well, we don't have anything in the music department, but we do have something in the voice department. We need a talent coordinator for this new show called Inspector Gadget. And so I was a talent coordinator for Inspector Gadget, and that kind of started this amazing career in voiceover and character voices.
Yeah. And so how long were you there before you made the next hop?
So I was in college when I landed that first job, and the professors at Masters were unbelievably kind and gracious to allow me kind of do directive studies so that I could take this job and work through getting my business degree of all things. But so I was there probably for about 4 years, off and on. We had high seasons and low seasons.
Yeah.
So when we were at the high season, I would be working for them as a talent coordinator on the various shows. And that's where I met someone who was setting up a new department at Disney to ensure character consistency and integrity for Roy Disney, who realized that the character assets were so valuable, and there were like 7 people doing the voice of Mickey Mouse. So one person for the theme parks, another guy for consumer products, another guy for the studio.
Yeah.
So, and they all kind of sounded different. And Roy said, this is ridiculous. We need, these are important assets. We need character consistency and integrity. Yeah. So this gentleman who he was working with started this department, and I was their first hire to come into the department.
Okay, and so what year was that?
That was 1988.
1988. So
Yeah.
you were at the beginning of the Renaissance period, so to speak.
I was, yeah, I say pre-Little Mermaid.
Yeah, pre-Little Mermaid. Wow. Well, that had to have been the next 11 years or so had to have been quite a ride, I'm sure.
They were. It was just so fun to be. It was kind of a family company. Again, I was kind of reporting to Roy Disney himself, so trying to ensure character consistency and integrity with Mickey Mouse and Winnie the Pooh and those characters was a fun job. I mean, it was kind of like a dream job, but we had no idea what was coming. I mean, when Little Mermaid popped, we're like, oh, this is great. People like animation again. And then, of course, after that, you've got Beauty and the Beast, and then Aladdin, and then kind of the pinnacle for us was The Lion King, which was just amazing to see the growth of animation and be there at that time at the studio.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And so tell me some of the work that you were doing during that time.
Oh, well, like I said, the idea was to just have character consistency.
Yeah.
So the company's so big, they needed someone to monitor how the characters were being used for all these ancillary outlets, consumer products, the theme parks. So we started out, just before I got there, they were already casting the definitive voice of Mickey Mouse and the definitive voice of Minnie Mouse and Goofy and Donald and Winnie the Pooh. And so I was going to help direct and ensure those characters were consistent as they were played out throughout the company. So that was the initial thought.
Yeah.
In fact, it's kind of a funny story. The voice of Mickey was a gentleman named Wayne Allwine, and the voice of Minnie was a woman named Lucy Taylor. They had never met before doing the voices, but they were constantly in the studio together as Mickey and Minnie, and the two of them fell in love and got married.
I figured that's where you were going. Wow.
Can you believe that?
I can believe it.
Dinner at their house was really something special,
That would have been a fun time, I'm sure.
It was really fun.
Oh, that's great. So you started out by making sure the voices were 100% the same, accurate. And then at what point did Disney start looking at other languages and getting their films into other arenas to where it's not just that one voice, but it's finding, I guess, characters that all sound the same, right?
So as our animation was becoming so popular, especially here in the United States, Roy Disney, Michael Eisner, who was our CEO at the time, said, hey, we need to have the same character consistency and integrity around the world. So they turned to our little department, Disney Character Voices, and said, well, you guys are doing a good job with what we're doing domestically with the characters. Can't you do that around the world? I mean, just like flip a switch and let's do it around the world.
No problem.
So we really kind of started putting a team together to ensure that we could take these films that were so successful out around the world in multiple languages. So by the time we started with like Beauty and the Beast, we were maybe at 9 languages around the world, maybe 10. You get to Aladdin, and I think we got up to 27. And then by the time we got to Lion King, we were doing more and more languages. I think we got up to 30 on Lion King in the first run, with 15 of those, I hope I have my numbers right, I think 15 of those were day and date, which means we were released in international markets the same time we did the domestic, which had never been done before in the industry. So we were trying to, pave new roads as we were, developing really what international dubbing, translation, localization was looking like for the industry.
So the work is probably pretty exceptionally hard anyways, but now you're saying we have a deadline that we all have to hit the same day and date. That really puts the pressure on.
Yeah, today, and I've left Disney's I've been gone for about a year now. But as I left, most of our markets were day and date. So we would release, we'll go back to Encanto, which is kind of the last film I worked on before I left. Encanto released in, I think, around 43 languages, day and date with that domestic release. Now, we don't finish the film right up until it's ready to be released.
Yeah.
So we're working in this parallel path around the world, and they make changes to the English version, and we have to make all those adjustments in all those languages. Hopefully we have a locked picture so the timing doesn't change, and we can just change this line if they do something different in the domestic film. So we're always gonna, the tail's kind of chasing the dog a little bit.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you essentially did that for about 35 years at Disney. Wow, what a
You know, working with the domestic voices and still kind of ensuring that character consistency on the domestic side, and then taking that consistency out around the world. And by the way, it wasn't just me. We had a huge team, amazingly talented people.
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much credit away from the
no,
people
it's
who were
a
doing
team, but yeah,
yeah,
no,
they were
that's
doing an amazing
great.
job.
And so as the people that do different voices, is there an actor or actress that stands out in your mind? It's like, man, it was a blast to work with
I have
this person.
so many of those stories.
I bet you do.
I love Tim Allen. In fact,
Yeah.
I told him just before I left, we were working on some Buzz Lightyear stuff, and I said, Tim, I get asked all the time, who's my favorite talent to work with? I said, I think you're it. And he said, well, it should be. We've been working long enough, you know. It's 1995, and so yeah, I really like Tim.
Tim would be a great
He's just funny.
Yeah.
And you know, when Tim does the voice, he's always, you know, talking into his wrist or standing there like this, whatever it takes for Buzz Lightyear. But he like really kind of gets into his character, becomes very stoic. And
Oh, I
he's
love
always
that.
talking into his wrist with every line. Hey, Star Command. But you know, there's been so many. You know, when a talent comes into the studio to perform a voice, they're usually there because they want to be.
Yeah.
You know, versus on-camera talent where they have the hair and the makeup and the cameras and the you know, the time on set while you're setting cameras. They can just walk into a studio in their pajamas
Yeah.
and record the voice. So they're usually there because they love it. So we had so many fun sessions.
Oh, I bet. I bet you could tell stories for hours. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
I remember we recorded James Earl Jones, who's like one of the great voices, right? I mean, Mufasa, and then later after Disney bought Star Wars, I directed him as Darth Vader. But we were recording him for a Disney nature film. He was our narrator for a film we did called Earth. So I cast him because I thought, well, he's kind of got the voice of God, right? I mean, so why not cast James Earl Jones to do a film called Earth?
Yeah.
And we were testing the microphone out, and they said, hey, James, can you just give us a couple lines? He goes, testing 1, 2, 3. And I had brought my son to the session, and he was maybe 14 at the time. And he goes, testing 1, 2, 3. You know Blake? It's my son. He goes, I'm your father. And I was like, oh man, and the guy wasn't recording. Otherwise, I would have had that recording. That's how my ringtone would have been.
Yeah, no
phone.
doubt.
Blake, I'm your father.
Oh, and Blake would have had that on his phone for like the rest of his life. So that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
So, well, and so back to localization and contextualization of all these films. What exactly is that? What does that mean when you say localization and contextualization?
Well, it's really trying to get any kind of content out in a different language, so it resonates with local audiences. And I think that's kind of the key, is to ensure that it resonates on a very local level. We used to call it an idiomatic adaptation. So you're using all the local idioms, the colloquial phrases that are relevant to that community or that market, to ensure that it resonates with them. So if you were to just do an A-B comparison with the English, you may see a little variation, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it work for the local people. And so I call it localization. Some people say, what does that mean? But it's just localizing the content so that it really resonates with the audience, so that they can appreciate the film the way that we appreciate it in English.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. So after 35 years at Disney, you decided to step away. Didn't at the time quite know what God had in store for
Right.
you. And you ended up with Come and See and the Chosen project.
Yeah.
So tell me how that came about.
Yeah, that was amazing. It's how that came about really is just of the Lord. We were my wife and I were actually just in Hawaii on a trip, thinking about, hey, my time at Disney may be running out. It's in the middle of COVID, and we're thinking, okay, I'm working from home, and it just seems like things are changing in the company, and maybe it's time to step away. And we went to go get a shave ice at like 11:30 in the morning. And in the middle of COVID, we decided to share a bench with someone. They said, hey, can we sit down? We said, yeah, have a seat. Start talking to the guy, and his name was Brad Hill. And I don't know if you know Brad. Brad works for a parachurch ministry called Glue. And I didn't know that at the time, but we start talking, find out he's a believer. I start telling him what I was doing, kind of the things that we were praying through about my job at Disney. And he said, we should keep in touch. So from that picnic bench that we were sitting on. We started Zooming every once in a while, and he was in touch with the team that was putting the Come and See Foundation together to work on The Chosen and get it out around the world. And he was in a meeting with them and said, "What's your pain point?" They go, "We just don't know how to get this thing out around the world." He goes, "I think I know a guy." I had a snow cone with him. And so the name of my production company is Snow Cone Productions because of that little moment.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is great. So you've been working with The Chosen, with Come and See, for several years?
That's been about a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, and the idea is we're trying to get that program out in 600 languages.
Wow.
There'll be maybe 100 or more dubbed. We're hoping for more dubbed languages, and the rest of them subtitled.
Okay. And so how do you make that choice of the languages that are dubbed versus subtitled? How is that? Is it kind of made for you? Or
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, based on the market, it's a lot more expensive to dub.
Okay.
But, it's, the markets don't necessarily have dubbing talent pools.
Yeah.
So that's a very difficult thing to get. In certain countries, there aren't any actors.
Right.
So how do you dub a film if you don't have any actors?
Yeah.
Not to mention something that is 7 seasons. That's what the word I was looking for. 7 seasons with 8 episodes.
Okay.
Can you imagine the size of that cast?
Oh, yeah.
With all those episodes. So you just don't have the talent pool in some of these countries. France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Japan, Latin America, Eastern Europe, you've got a ton of talent.
Yeah.
But we don't have that in certain markets.
So compared to a Disney animation, is this harder, easier, or about the same as far as finding that talent?
Well, I think once you get beyond your top 50 markets, it's a lot harder.
Okay.
And it's harder to dub because of all the theological content in The Chosen.
Okay.
So we have to ensure that when it's translated, that we have theological accuracy. So we put a lot of steps in place to where we translate it, sometimes with secular translators, and then hand it over to a theological expert. We call them subject matter experts in the markets that review the script and change things based on the biblical content in the show.
Yeah.
So it's a little tricky to get that right, and it's certainly difficult to find the talent in these smaller markets. But we're looking at new technologies to potentially get us over the finish line in some of these markets and have as diverse a cast as possible.
And so what does the role of technology play nowadays in this market?
Well, I think we're going to start seeing opportunities with translation, where translations, as we know, we can go on Google and we can say, hey, translate this from English to Spanish, and it gives you a pretty good translation these days of that phrase. I think we're going to start seeing that in translation, and it's going to get better and better and better. Again, with something like The Chosen, the theological accuracy is what is at risk.
Right.
So we still have to have that human component. So I would love, in a dream scenario, to get to an 80-20 model where we have 80% maybe AI assistance in our translations, and then 20% human touch to ensure that it's accurate. So I think little by little, we're chipping away at it, getting better and better. But then it all depends on the size of the market and the data input that you're putting into, the machine of any given language. So it's not going to know a whole lot about the Tigrinya language, right? Because there's not enough data in Tigrinya for it to learn how to translate properly. So we're looking at voice models and things like that to make our jobs easier.
So maybe a few years away and hit that 80-20 model?
Yeah, I think so. And there's even things we can do with audio now to, make it sound like more of a diverse cast than what we really have. So we're looking at all sorts of things.
I love that. I love just your passion for localization and contextualization, but I love your passion for the gospel. And I love just talking to you earlier, talking about the concept of being salt and a preservative to prevent decay, and your years at Disney. You did such a great job with that, so really appreciate it. And now that you're working with the Chosen Project and you're getting this out into so many different languages, what would you tell Christians that may not understand, why do we need this localization and contextualization? What's the big push for it?
Well, I think, you can go back to, the Tower of Babel. I mean, when our languages are broken apart, we stop communicating. So the gospel doesn't get to some of these people as a result. So we had a meeting with someone who's in the tech space not too long ago, and he said, "Hey, can I open the meeting in prayer?" We said, "Yeah." And he used this word. He said in his prayer, he said, "Can we reverse Babel?" I thought that's a great way of saying it, right?
Yeah.
Because we need to get the gospel out to everyone.
Yeah.
So it makes for a great opportunity to get the indigenous tongue of people. That is going to resonate with them, to get it in their indigenous language so that they can understand it. So I think it's crucially important that people are able to get this content, a story like The Chosen, which is the story, the life of Christ, to them in their own language.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't read. The literacy rate is really low.
Yeah.
So if we can dub a film and they can watch it and they can hear this story, it's a great way to do it. I mean, obviously we want great pastors, but we're getting into places like the Middle East where you can't preach the gospel, without being jailed. So it's pretty exciting to see what The Chosen is doing around the world in terms of breaking down walls, because it's an art form, and it's entertainment per se. And we're getting into markets like in the Middle East where people are finding it on their phone. We got a letter from a guy in the Taliban the other day who started watching The Chosen and picked up his Bible. He's leaving the Taliban. I mean, how amazing is that?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Only God can do that.
Totally.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Rick, are there any projects you have coming up? I know that Come and See and The Chosen take up a lot of time.
Right.
Do you see anything on the horizon that you might be a part of, or anything out there?
Well, I'm here at Sing.
You are here at Sing.
I got that going for me.
That's right.
Which is awesome. It's a joy to be a part of this.
Yeah. Well, we certainly appreciate having you and Carrie here. And
thanks.
So,
yeah.
But
it's been fun. It's fun. We've known the Gettys forever, and in fact, I think they were still in Ireland when we first met them. They had come to the U.S. and they've just been dear friends. And to see what they're doing here and how they're kind of bringing. We're talking about this morning, bringing so many people together from different kind of walks, but music is that kind of one unifier, and theology in music is so important, and the hymns that we sing. I just love what they're doing, so it's a real privilege to be here.
Well, great. Well, Rick, thank you so much for your time.
Man.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.